Hi, I'm Rob. An important piece of information has just reached my ears, and you need to hear this too. The medical world has just acknowledged, ever so quietly, that they have lost the fight against this parasite, and no amount of weapons, bullets, or military training can protect us from it. The threat of the century comes not from Russia or ISIS, but from a tiny little bug that can claim your life in a crisis, and the U.S. government is completely unprepared. I know this might sound a bit overwhelming, but keep watching, because this could mean your very survival. 10 years ago, I didn't know what I was going up against. I went through hell and back trying to fight this killer. It robbed me of my hope, my security, and even someone I love, and it's guaranteed to come back during any crisis. So please bear with me for a few moments, because I'm going to expose this disguised slayer that preys on the weak, the elderly, and even innocent children. I'll show you exactly when and how it will come back, and why it's never just a strange coincidence. I'll share with you what I'm doing personally to protect my family. It's the only way to beat the odds when the death toll rises into the millions. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Robert Gray. I'm married, have 2 kids, and grew up in a small farm 57 miles west from New Orleans. I'm no survival expert, but what you're about to hear next is a true story, and it can happen to you. I used to believe all my food and emergency supplies could protect me from anything, but I learned the hard way how wrong I really was. It all started 10 years ago, in late August 2005. My family and I were living in New Orleans at the time, and we'd just heard Hurricane Katrina was about to strike. Luckily, I was prepared and just a few hours away from bugging out to my mother-in-law's in Texas. I was on my way to pick up my dad when the unexpected happened. My dad refused to abandon his home. He wanted to stay and try to save it from the flood. I was mad and scared at the same time. I couldn't leave my dad behind, so I made the hard choice. I sent my wife and kids to Texas, and I decided to stay with him, hoping I could convince him to leave the city. As you already know, Hurricane Katrina was worse than anyone ever expected. The flood wiped out most homes, my dad's included. We'd never have survived had it not been for the high attic and a boat I found floating around in the backyard. I thought we'd survived the worst of it, but things only got worse. My dad had started complaining about headaches, stomach cramps, and nausea. I thought nothing of it, but then he started to grow pale like a corpse, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I raced him over to the nearest hospital, and then the nightmare began. On our way to the hospital, all you could hear was gunshots and screaming. I remember passing by our neighborhood pharmacy and seeing a long line of people with weary faces and hollow stares. I witnessed people attacking each other with knives, guns, and bats. There were even rumors of drug addicts terrorizing pharmacists and executing the elderly to get their next fix. When we arrived at the hospital, the smell of death nearly choked you. The floor was turning red faster than doctors could reach people, and everywhere you looked there was a bed covered in white sheets, what I assumed were dead people. There was no power or air conditioning, and the temperature was 110 degrees. It was dark and humid. You felt like you were in a pressure cooker. And the hospital was packed like a sardine can. There were even animals in the emergency room, and everywhere you looked, people were clinging for their lives. Women, children, grown men, the elderly, coughing, wheezing, and bleeding. I won't get into details. Let's just say it was the day I'd walked into a horror movie. And it got even worse. You could hear gunshots just a couple of blocks from the hospital. People were killing each other over anything that could bring them relief, and even the doctors knew it. One nurse whispered, "We have no way to defend ourselves." Doctors and nurses also panicked about contaminated sewage, garbage, and floodwater spilling into the hospital. To make a long story short, my dad and I waited all day, but no one could help us. Doctors, nurses were literally running from one place to the other and still couldn't keep up with the workload, and they were forced to only treat the most critical patients. After the hurricane, doctors and nurses were convicted for speeding up the death in certain patients because they couldn't keep up. With nowhere to go, I figured the safest place for him to be was the hospital. My dad and I were forced to sleep on the floor and hope for the best. But he continued to get worse, shivering, vomiting, and then somewhere between 3 to 4 a.m., my dad died in my arms. Months later, I discovered he died of a small wound on his ankle. He'd caught a Vibrio infection from the highly contaminated floodwater. You can imagine how I felt, how mad and frustrated, because I put blood, sweat, and tears in making sure we have enough food and supplies to get us through any disaster. But I never thought my dad would die from a scratch. So why am I sharing this story with you today? It's simple. I used to believe the biggest threat in any crisis was the lack of food, water, or shelter. But the truth is, the number one killer in a crisis is disease and infection. And it doesn't matter if it's an earthquake, terrorist attack, or the collapse of the dollar. One of the first things to kill most people in a crisis is an illness or disease. It took me years to get over what happened, and I needed answers. I talked to doctors and friends, and I researched for months. And here's some jaw-dropping facts I uncovered. Most Americans think our medical system is the same as other first world countries, but in fact our medical system is a ticking bomb waiting to explode. The American College of Emergency Physicians, ACEP, rates our medical system with a D+, and in some states it only manages a startling F-. This means if there's a major emergency, your hospital won't be able to help you. During Katrina, non-threatening illnesses turned deadly because of lack of supplies and medicine. Imagine what would happen if we faced a national disaster. Hospitals would be packed to the brim within hours, or even worse, closed down for good across the country. Minor conditions could turn deadly in days, even hours, without medical care, and the death toll would be astronomical. And you won't get life-saving medicine even if you tried, because pharmacies will shut down or get ransacked by addicts. Trucks carrying medical supplies stop with the next terrorist attack, natural disaster, or economic meltdown, and pharmacies are emptied within minutes. And that's not all. Public services like police, ambulances, garbage collectors are out of commission for days, weeks, even months at a time. When the hurricane hit New Orleans, it knocked out both power and running water. And when the grid is down, sewage and water systems fail. Raw sewage literally runs into the streets and contaminates the water supply beyond repair. The bottom line is, with no clean running water, power, and medication to prevent diseases, and no hospitals to control the spread of diseases, you and your family will be in serious danger. After my father's death, I realized how oblivious I'd been to the real danger. I couldn't live with the thought of my kids dying because of some scratches. I knew I had to do something. I glued myself to the computer and I worked like a dog. I spent the first few months looking on forums and websites, but I found nothing. The only answers I found were stockpiling medicine or getting some first aid training. The problem is first aid training is not enough. First aid is designed for one thing and one thing only, to get someone to a hospital, but you don't always have this option during a crisis. I racked my brain for months trying to find the answer, but kept coming up short. I didn't know where else to turn, and then one day I stumbled on an article about Romania. I finally realized the answer may lie in poor countries. Romania is a European Union country, but just barely. It's also one of the poorest countries in Europe, and poorer than many African states. Romania's entire national health budget is $2.6 billion, 2 times less than Johns Hopkins Hospital for a year, which makes it on par with many third world countries. I discovered that very often Romanian doctors are forced to treat their patients only during daylight. Why? Because there isn't enough money to pay for power bills. And patients have access to only $811 worth of treatment, while a U.S. patient's life is worth more than $8,000. Yet people of all ages are saved every year with simple medical techniques and generic medication. And guess what? They stay alive and healthy. I realized the answer to my problems didn't lie in American medicine, but in third world medical secrets. 2 years ago, I found a Romanian doctor willing to help me. His name was Radu, and he's a general surgeon, but he's not your typical first world doctor. Radu's a special kind of doctor who's seen both sides of the medical world. He lived and graduated from medical school in Romania, and he was trained outside the first world comfort zone of unlimited supplies and technology, where need often exceeds want and where doctors are forced to pay out of their own pocket to get things like gauze or syringes to treat patients. And then he moved to work and live in Germany, one of the world's leaders in medicine, and he's seen the latest technology and medical techniques. When I asked him how they did things in Romania, and how did you manage to keep so many people alive without modern medicine and so little money, he gave me a straight answer. 80% of the worst medical conditions were triggered by a handful of causes, and if you could treat the causes, you'd avoid almost every major disease. I then told him about my dad, if it was possible for me to learn how to save someone in a crisis. And he said that during a disaster, knowing a handful of tricks can make the difference between life and death when there is no doctor around. And in the following weeks, he taught me those simple techniques. But this wasn't enough. I knew others needed this information just as much as me. So I asked Radu if he'd be willing to help me create a program showing everyday Americans like me how to prevent, treat, and even save lives during a major crisis. He didn't need much convincing because he'd been wanting to share his knowledge with the world for years. He believes this knowledge will empower people all over the world, and he agreed, but on one condition. No Harvard graduate doctor would rewrite his work. Why? Because modern-day doctors are clueless when it comes to in-the-trenches survival medicine. They rely too much on technology, and they're helpless without it. Plus, doctors with fancy degrees have big egos, and Radu knew if some posh doctor was involved, they'd do everything to keep this material from ever being published. It made them look bad. We spent 3 months putting this material together. When we had our first draft, I showed it to some friends, and they were blown away. They kept saying, "This is the missing piece of the puzzle I didn't even know I needed." That's how the Survival MD program came to life. The only complete medical field survival guide for the layman, showing you how to treat yourself and loved ones in an emergency when doctors, pharmacies, and hospitals are shut down. It's simple and straightforward, and you don't need any kind of medical training or medical professional looking over your shoulder. Plus, you won't need to spend a bucket load of cash or waste weeks poring over hundreds of pages either, because there are no weird medical terms to learn. It's so easy a 12-year-old can understand it. I'm not promising you will treat every illness on the planet, because you won't have to. This revolutionary program shows you how to prevent and even treat the deadliest of diseases you'll be faced with during a major crisis. All you have to do is go through this program for 10 minutes a day for the next 10 days, and at the end of it, you'll know more about disaster medical survival than first-world doctors, trained to always rely on expensive and modern equipment. Here's just a glimpse of what you'll find inside this medical emergency crash course. Survival MD will show you how to easily figure out a diagnosis based on the TeCaMoLo principle. Third world doctors use this medical formula to get to the root of problems fast, because knowing where and what to look for is a matter of life and death when minutes and seconds count, and it will save you hours of agony and eventually your life. This information has never been revealed to the public here in America. The Survival MD program also shows you the most effective medications and supplies you can stock up on today, and this is based on years of Dr. Radu's experience. You don't need to waste your money on insanely expensive brands. You will discover which meds cover a large range of diseases, are easy to administer, and act in the shortest time possible. Plus, you'll discover which meds rob your body from healing itself. Fact is, they do more harm than good unless you know when to administer them. You'll learn how to put together a real medical first aid kit. This includes 9 items you absolutely need to toss in your bag if you're forced to leave your home, because these things you never thought you could use will in fact save your life. You'll discover the top 5 causes of death you'll be faced with in the aftermath of a crisis. It may sound weird, but focusing on these means you'll ward off 80% of the illnesses, so there's no need to fill your brain with medical problems that have a 1 in a million chance of happening. And I'll show you how to manage garbage and human waste when public services come to a screeching halt. And this will be useful when everything we've come to take for granted falls apart. You won't have to worry about drinking contaminated water or leaving your children out to play in third world wasteland. And that's not all. Inside Survival MD, you'll find the worst medical mistakes you can do in a crisis. Like, do you know what you should never do if you're stabbed, or if you suffered an animal bite? People in Romania struggle with this horrifying scenario every day because of a high crime rate and huge number of stray dogs. Not 1, but 2 key procedures to avoid bleeding to death or even getting an infection. It took Radu 9 years of medical school to figure this one out. And do you know why you should never use a plastic bag or wet bandage to cover up a wound? In fact, doing it increases your risk of infection and even death. Plus, and this is my favorite part of the package, you get inside tips and tricks even laymen can do. You'll learn how to put a dislocated shoulder back in its place just like professionals do, and it's easier than you think. And how to master a procedure that might cause some first-world doctors to shake their heads, a forbidden medical secret that will save you from a horrible death when disaster strikes. Americans pay hundreds of dollars for it when going to the hospital. You'll also find out how and where to get a few months' worth of prescription drugs, a little-known secret for getting behind-the-counter drugs without a prescription. And that's just a fraction of what you get. Survival MD shows you how to stay alive until professional help will be available again, even if it takes months. And it can mean the difference between life and death, because you won't find these secrets on the internet or in a medical library. Survival MD isn't just another guide. It's a collection of true, proven-to-work medical techniques taken from real-life situations. After you go through the material, you'll become a valuable resource not only for your family and friends. These skills will make you a priceless asset to your community when medical services are gone. Most people think all heroes carry guns, yet it's those helping others and saving lives who are the real heroes of our country. And the way I see it, it doesn't matter what kind of disaster strikes. You'll need these life-saving medical skills. We're used to going to the doctor whenever we get a little cough, right? Or go to an emergency room for something more serious. But what if it's all gone? Doctors, ambulances, emergency rooms? You're on your own in a crisis, because it could take weeks or months until medical care will be available again. And you don't need to wait until disaster pounds on your door to prepare, because some disasters happen without any warning at all. Plus, it's the ultimate tool you can use to barter for anything. So let me ask you a question. What do you treasure most in life, more important than all the food, water, and gold? Your life and the life of your family is priceless. So how much is it worth to you to see you and your family healthy and happy in a disaster? If this program is the missing piece of the puzzle to achieve full self-reliance, it's the only way to make sure you and your family won't cross paths with deadly medical problems. Ask yourself, how much would that be worth to you? Most medical programs and training courses sell for hundreds, even thousands of dollars, and all the complicated words are a waste of time. Yet Survival MD contains a lot more real information about serious conditions you're guaranteed to see in a crisis. And I want you to experience the power of this life-saving advice for yourself. Radu said this material is worth at least $1,000, because what we managed to put together in this program has never been done before. Yet most people won't be able to afford $1,000, and it's important for all of us to have this. Everyone who went through this Health Bible says I should sell this program for at least $100. But I don't want you to pay $100, not even $50. This is something everyone deserves to get. So, at this moment, to help you get access to this life-saving information, I'm willing to offer the complete Survival MD Bible to you for just $37. The only way to get it is to click the Add to Cart button now. The more people have this information today, the better we'll all be. And you should have this even if the world doesn't end. It still contains a lot of information that could save your life in many other situations. And if you don't have your health, you have nothing. And there's more. If you join me now, you'll not only have access to this life-saving information, you'll also get a special report on how to survive without prescription. In a crisis, one of the worst things that can happen is being without your medication. It can lead to health complications, pain, or even death. And if you or someone you love suffers from a chronic condition requiring medication, this exclusive report is exactly what you need. It shows you how to stay perfectly safe and well using alternative remedies and techniques. And you'll know how to live a healthier, safer, and self-reliant life in any crisis when prescription meds aren't available. This special report isn't available in any bookstore or anywhere else, and you get it absolutely free when you get Survival MD right now. And it gets better. I'm so confident you'll be amazed by Survival MD, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. Get Survival MD today, and I'll give you a 60 days, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. Just go through the program, and I guarantee you'll be thrilled. What you have here is a breakthrough in self-reliance, helping millions of patriots like me and you to outlive deadly diseases when disaster strikes. Yet if you're not fully satisfied with Survival MD for any reason, just send me an email and I'll give you your money back ASAP. You take absolutely no risk. All you need to do is click the Add to Cart button below. Take a few seconds to register and you'll get instant access to Survival MD. In this presentation, you witnessed undeniable proof America will sink to the level of a third world country when a major crisis hits. For heaven's sake, I lived right through it. Whether it's going to be a hurricane, an economic collapse, or a terrorist attack throwing us back to the Middle Ages, there will be no sanitation systems to prevent diseases and no medical system to count on. Everything you and I take for granted today will vanish in a crisis. You've seen what happens when all hell breaks loose. How will you or those you love survive? Children and seniors are the most vulnerable to illnesses because their immune systems are weaker than others, and they're the first to get infected. I have 2 children, and I can't even begin to imagine what my life would be like if anything happened to them. I've shown you why the need for this life-saving knowledge will rear its head sometime in your life. No matter if things are good or bad, in best-case scenarios you could suffer from dehydration, respiratory infections, or viral gastroenteritis. And in worst-case scenarios, you could be dealing with salmonella infections, TB, hepatitis, and many more. Now the ball is in your court, and as I see it, there are 3 paths ahead of you. The first one is to do nothing. You could walk away from this presentation thinking you'll be fine. Yet in your heart, you know there will be no one to help you. Doctors will be forced to treat people in overcrowded hotel lobbies and churches, just like they did during the heavy protests in Ukraine this year. Hospitals, public services will be gone. Or you can do it on your own. It will take you years to gather this kind of information. I know this because I've already struggled through that, and I've paved the road for you. My only purpose was to uncover the truth and find ways to protect my family. I've spent a great deal of time and money researching and editing to make this information as crystal clear as it is now. There's no faster, cheaper, or safer way to beat life-threatening diseases without a doctor in a crisis. Or you can simply skip all the hard work I've been through, save yourself tons of money, and get Survival MD right now, because it's the only field guide that teaches you how to survive without a doctor. You'll not only outlive almost any diseases and emergencies proven to occur in a crisis, you'll become a prized medical resource for your family and your community for years to come. All you have to do is go through Survival MD for 10 minutes a day for the next 10 days, and you'll feel like you finally own the keys to protecting yourself in a major crisis. Years from now, you'll thank yourself for taking action, because these skills and information are valuable in any situation, and particularly valuable when medical help is not on the way. Plus, you get this free report on how to survive without prescription. It's not sold in stores or anywhere else online, and you're covered by my 60 days money-back guarantee. There's no need to worry, because if you're not amazed with what this program has to offer, you'll get your money back, no questions asked. And you can keep the bonus. That's a thank you gift for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Here's the thing, though. I'm not sure how long I can offer Survival MD at this price. This is just an introductory offer, and it could jump any time. And there's a good chance I'll be forced to raise the price to $99 in the coming weeks. So get this now while you can. Just click the yellow button below now. It will take you to a secure page. Take 30 seconds to fill in your details, and you'll get access to your Survival MD program right away. You'll also receive How to Survive Without Prescription free, a $35 value. Both programs worth over $99 for only $37. You could easily save thousands of dollars on medical care this year alone for your family, which makes $37 a total bargain. Thank you for watching this presentation. I hope you got a lot of value from it. I look forward to seeing you in the members area. Still here? You probably have some unanswered questions. I'll go over some of the most common questions real quick. Do I need to be medically trained or have had first aid training? No, this material is simple and straightforward. It was especially designed for people with no previous medical training. Do I need a medical degree to understand the material? No, there's no medical jargon and terminology, just plain English. Is this about prevention or cure? It's about both. Inside, you'll discover what steps to take before disaster day and how to fight back deadly diseases in post-apocalyptic America. I'll be able to say goodbye to the doctor forever after this course, right? This course is not intended to replace care from medical professionals in any way. It gives you proven and clean medical advice to survive any catastrophe when there will be no doctors around. Yet part of it will still be useful in day-to-day life as well. Still on the fence? It all comes down to this. You can either walk around blindfolded and hope everything is sunshine, or you can get this medical field package at an incredible price today. Take the time to go through it and live your life knowing if you do somehow walk across deadly medical conditions, this program will show you how to fend for yourself and your family. So don't become just another bystander and educate yourself ahead of time. You'll be glad you did when the need arises. This is invaluable knowledge and wisdom you can use in any crisis. Knowledge is power, and it's always a good idea to learn how to take care of yourself and your family. And who would you rather learn from? A top-notch doctor who's a slave to modern medical equipment? Or a doctor who saved thousands of people on a daily basis with his bare hands? So get this today. Click the button below, and you can get started right now. Thank you for watching this presentation. May God keep each of us safe.